Hello and welcome to my channel in which we speak about spiritual growth, self-development, and how we can live the best life. And in this video today, I would love to explore with you how can we bridge that gap in our lives of feeling like this is where I'm at and this is where I want to be and I don't know how to get there. So for me, the most important way that we can bridge that gap is by coming back to self-love. And I'll be speaking more about how that exactly works, bridging that gap with self-love. And first though, I would love to share why is it so important for us as human beings right now to be focusing and coming back to self-love. So, when we love ourselves so much that we are overflowing with love, that is how we can love others so much. So having our cup full, brimming over, is the way that we can love others so much. And so that's how we can create these ripple effects of spreading love, joy, harmony, peace throughout the world, and how we can all as a collective come to that way of living, come to that beautiful heart-centered way of living that we all know is possible and that we might be a little lost about how can we actually get there. So this is why self-love is so important right now. And I'd also like to talk about how we can consciously cultivate more self-love in our lives. What are the steps that we can take? What can we do for ourselves? But before I do that, I would love to share a story about my own journey of coming back to self-love, to feeling worthy within myself. So for me, as a child, I grew up with parents who were really hard on themselves a lot of the time, and also the general, not feeling accepted for who you are as a child and being told that you have to be different, you have to do this, you're not allowed to do that, also added to my feeling of I'm not safe to be myself, I can't love myself the way that I am. Then also my peers, I got bullied in school for 2 years, so that certainly added to that. And then also my general anxiety and depression that I had for 11 years, that also was very much about feeling unworthy, not loving myself, not accepting myself. And astonishingly, the way that I got to break that cycle was by having by living with somebody who was mentally and verbally abusive with me. And it got to the point where I was like, wait, what's going on here? I am worthy of being treated better than that. I should not be treated like that by anyone. It was so bad that I suddenly realized that I can do better than that. And it's so lovely how this is how we get to break the cycles, by having painful experiences, but as an adult where we have the tools to really use whatever happens to and for us, to use it and to work with it. As a child, we are at the mercy of what happens to us and for us. And so this means that we get to absorb it all, we get to take it in like a sponge, and we develop these cycles, these patterns, these ways of thinking that then create more of the same, experiences in our lives. And then when we come into adulthood, that's when we can start to break those cycles, because we are not at the mercy of other people anymore. We are looking after ourselves. We don't have those primary caregivers, those parents looking after us in the same capacity anymore. We are actually looking after ourselves, and we now have the power to change those stories within us, to change those ways of thinking that aren't beneficial for us. And so what happened for me was that experience was so painful. It was so horrible. And I was an adult looking after myself, like as best as I could, I realized that I am worthy of more than that. And that's how my self-love journey began, by being treated really badly. How beautiful is that? That in that really painful event was such a beautiful gift of me coming back to worthiness, coming back to self-love. And before that, I was taking a lot of drugs. I was not looking after myself. I was not eating healthily. I was experiencing anxiety and depression to the point where a lot of the time I couldn't work. I couldn't leave the house. This is where I was at before I had that really painful experience. And then by having that painful experience, I shifted into a completely new way of being. And so we get to use these painful experiences as gifts to pivot ourselves in a different direction. So I'm wondering, have you experienced something like this in your life? Something that was so painful and yet it was so beautiful that it could shift a huge thing within your life? Or are you experiencing something like that right now, but you can already have the awareness and understanding that this is shifting you in a different direction? So coming back to self-love though, so for me, that was the beginning of my self-love journey. And so being in that state of not being able to even have a job, to being able to have a job, to support myself, to not feel anxiety and depression anymore, which is another story in itself, because I had a moment of intense spiritual connection, which then fully allowed me to come out of feeling anxiety and depression, and I've never felt it ever since, ever again. So I will probably make another video on that at some point if that's interesting, and if you're curious about hearing that, then let me know in the comments. But basically what I'm saying is, my gap was so big when I was experiencing anxiety and depression, and I was not empowered or not empowering myself to make changes. And when I came to self-love, that's when I got to bridge that gap. That's when I got to change my whole story. I got to change my story from feeling worthless, not feeling worthy of having a good life, of having my basic needs met all the time, of having my emotional needs met. I came out of all of that by coming into self-love. And so this is how we can bridge the gap. And once we realize that we are worthy and we are empowered to do what is necessary to be able to shift our lives in a more positive direction, that's when we can start applying some tools that can help us with cultivating more self-love within us, because it is about rewriting that story. Because even when we have the awareness of I am worthy of more than being treated that badly, we still have the old patterns within us that are playing, those old stories. Oh, you're not worthy because of this, or oh, you're not safe because of that. And so bit by bit, once we recognize and have the awareness, we can then also empower ourselves to take steps towards bridging that gap, towards feeling worthy, towards cultivating that dream life that we know is possible. If other people can do it, we can also do it. The way that we get to bridge the gap is by empowering ourselves to know that I can do things for myself that will help me. And so one beautiful tool to bridge that gap or to come into more self-love is to write a list of appreciation of what we appreciate about ourselves. This is such a beautiful tool because we get to highlight what is it that we love about ourselves? What are those positive things that we bring? And we rest in that energy of appreciation, of love, of loving ourselves, turning that love towards ourselves. Because I think a lot of us are so used to turning that love towards another and not turning towards ourselves. And when we don't when we don't turn it towards ourselves, then we cannot fully love another properly. It all starts with us. It all starts within us. So this may also seem really counter to what we have learned, because very often people associate self-love or appreciating ourselves or saying things that we love about ourselves with arrogance. And arrogance to me has nothing to do with it, because arrogance is about actually not loving yourself. So then feeling like you have to be better than another to feel like you're worthy. It's about kind of like this competition thing, right? And feeling like you're better. Whereas true self-love is recognizing that we are all one, we are all equal in that respect of worthiness of love. We all are worthy of love, all of us. And then recognizing that means that I am worthy of love, and by me loving myself, I can spread more of that love, as we've said before. So basically, arrogance has nothing to do with it. It is truly about knowing that I am worthy of being loved the way that I am. I am worthy of that right here, right now. And what can I do? I can write a list. And it might be in the beginning that we can only think of a few things because it's unnatural for us to do that, or it should be natural. And actually it's a very natural thing. But right now, because of our programming, it feels unnatural to be doing that. So we get to start with whatever comes up first. And it might only be 3 things, and we get to build on that. And eventually it could be that you will be able to write a page of things that you love about yourself every day, to just really come into that frequency, to cultivate it, to rest in it, to allow yourself that time to simply be loving yourself. So journaling and writing down those things that we love about ourselves is a super powerful way to focus that kind of energy and focus on ourselves in that way, in that loving way. And then we get to build on that. We get to recognize that there may be things that we don't love about ourselves right now. There may be that voice of fear or the voice of the ego that seems to always say these nasty things that we don't like, we hate that. And then recognizing that if we are rejecting that part of ourselves, we are still not loving our full selves. So then we also get to recognize that that voice is okay. We might not want to listen to it, we might not act upon it because it doesn't usually really have the best interest for us, even though it thinks it does. We get to hear that voice and accept it and love it and embrace it and not act upon it, and know that there's also this real true loving voice within us that knows better than that voice, the voice of the ego, the fear voice. So also, while we're at it, actually, to me, the opposite of love is fear. So for us to come back to self-love means that we are making the space smaller for fear to exist. And when we do not live in fear, we live in abundance, in love, in empowerment, in feeling like we have power in our lives and feeling like we can live the best lives and live it to the best capacity. So that's another reason why coming back to love, coming back to self-love is so important as well, because we also get to make the space smaller for the fear, and then we will make better choices that are more in service of us, in service of others, and generally just living in more appreciation for life as well. So I'm sure there are so many tools for cultivating more self-love, and if you know more, then let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear more. For me, what's coming up right now is journaling and whatever way we can, loving all parts of ourselves, and also in general just doing activities that we love. and that help us feel more love. For me, when I meditate, for example, I just feel so much love. That is what I feel within me. So for me, meditation is a beautiful way of feeling more love, of feeling more self-love. And yeah, just following your passion, following what excites you, doing those things that light you up, loving ourselves so much that we feel worthy of doing more of those things, because it really is about us creating our own suffering. If we know we love doing that thing, but we're still doing that thing that we hate, or we're doing something in a way that we hate, where we feel like, I don't want to do that, I feel so resistant, then we are choosing to live like that, when we can also choose to love ourselves so much that we get to enjoy that thing that we think we hate in whatever capacity that may be. It's all about flowing downstream, right? Like Abraham Hicks says, we get to either try and swim upstream, and then we have all the resistance really hard, and it's like, oh, so much effort. Or we get to swim downstream, and we get to feel the ease, we get to feel that love, we get to feel the joy, we get to feel like we are being held and supported by that current, rather than trying to fight against the current to be able to get to our thing, right? So flowing downstream, embodying that energy, that's how we get to create such a beautiful life for ourselves. So I hope this video was helpful for you, and if it was, then give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments what was the most important part or message or wisdom or tool or whatever it may be in this video that resonated with you. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next video.